On the same day, Ukrainian forces announced a new wave of deep strikes across Russian-controlled territory. One question quickly emerged. Was this merely another series of isolated attacks, or the beginning of something much larger? In just a short period, Ukrainian forces targeted air defense systems, surveillance radars, and key transportation routes far behind the front line. At first glance, these operations appeared unrelated, but viewed together, they suggest a carefully coordinated effort aimed at weakening the systems that allow Russia to detect threats, protect strategic assets, and sustain combat operations. If that assessment is correct, the battlefield may be changing in ways that are not immediately visible. To understand why, we first need to examine what happened near Volnovakha. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Military Force for more in-depth analysis of the wars shaping today's world. The strike near Volnovakha mattered because Ukraine did not simply destroy 2 missile launchers. It hit a protective layer guarding one of Russia's most important rear corridors in southern Donetsk. According to Ukraine's Spartan Brigade, its Black Sky UAV battalion released footage showing 2 Russian S-300 launchers being destroyed near Volnovakha, a city sitting on the vital line between Donetsk and Mariupol. At first, this may sound like a small tactical event. 2 launchers are not an entire air defense system, and Russia still has many missile batteries across occupied territory. But in war, location often matters more than numbers. A destroyed launcher near an empty field is one thing. A destroyed launcher near a major logistics route is something very different. Volnovakha has long been more than just a name on the map. It is a key junction linking Russian-controlled Donetsk with Mariupol and the southern approaches towards Zaporizhzhia. Through this corridor, Russia can move troops, ammunition, fuel, repair vehicles, and reserve forces towards several directions at once. In the army fighting a long war, this kind of route is not just useful, it is a lifeline. If that line becomes unsafe, every convoy takes longer, every delivery becomes riskier, and every commander near the front must begin asking the same question. Will the next shipment arrive in time? That is why Russian air defense around Volnovakha has such high value. These systems are not placed there only to shoot down aircraft. They help protect the roads, rail lines, depots, command posts, and troop movements that keep Russian operations alive in Donetsk and the south. As Ukrainian drones become more accurate and more able to reach deep behind the front, Russia must defend not only its soldiers in trenches, but also the hidden structure behind them. The moment Ukraine can threaten that structure, the battlefield expands far beyond the contact line. The S-300 was originally designed as an air defense system, but during this war, Russia has also used some S-300 missiles against ground targets. This matters because Ukraine's assessment is not limited to the loss of metal and launch tubes. By removing 2 launchers, Ukrainian forces may have reduced Russia's local ability to intercept aerial threats, and also weakened one tool Russia has used to strike Ukrainian positions or cities from a distance. In simple terms, the same loss cuts in 2 directions. It opens more space in the air, and it removes part of the firepower Russia could redirect toward the ground. The deeper point is that Ukraine appears to be changing how it measures success. In earlier phases of the war, many battlefield updates focused on the number of tanks destroyed, armored vehicles burned, or soldiers eliminated. Those numbers still matter, but they do not tell the whole story. A modern military does not fight as separate pieces. It's as a network. Air defense launchers protect logistics hubs. Logistics hubs feed artillery units. Artillery supports infantry attacks. Radar systems warn missile batteries. If one piece is damaged at the right place and at the right time, the effect can travel through the whole structure. That is why the Volnovakha strike should not be seen as an isolated hit. It was a pressure point. By striking the systems guarding the Donetsk-Mariupol corridor, Ukraine sent a clear message. Russian rear areas are no longer safe simply because they sit behind the front. Every route, launcher, depot, and radar now has to be treated as part of the battlefield. For Russian commanders, that creates a difficult problem. They can move more air defense into the area, but then another sector becomes weaker. They can spread systems out, but then coverage becomes thinner. They can keep assets concentrated, but that makes them easier to find. So, the destruction of two S-300 launchers near Volnovakha was not only about what burned on the ground. It was about what became more exposed afterward. Ukraine was testing the shield around one of Russia's key supply arteries, and the results showed that even a heavily protected corridor can be pressured by small, precise drone units. But destroying missile launchers is only one part of the equation. Before any missile can be fired, someone first has to detect the threat. And that is exactly where Ukraine struck next. Ukraine's next move showed that it was not only hunting missile launchers, it was also trying to blind the systems that make those launchers dangerous. According to the Ukrainian General Staff, Ukrainian forces struck two Russian radar systems near Kerch, in occupied Crimea, a Nebo radar and a Sky-M radar. On paper, these are not as dramatic as burning missile launchers or exploding ammunition depots. They do not create the same fireball, and they are harder for the public to understand. But for military planners, radar systems are often among the most valuable targets on the battlefield because they decide who sees first, who reacts first, and who survives the first strike. Crimea remains one of Russia's most heavily defended military regions because it is more than occupied territory. It is a military platform. From Crimea, Russia can support operations in the Black Sea, protect supply routes towards southern Ukraine, launch missiles, host aircraft, and watch large parts of the surrounding airspace. That is why Moscow has built several layers of surveillance and air defense across the peninsula. The purpose is simple: detect Ukrainian drones, missiles, and aircraft before they get close enough to hit key military sites. If that warning network is weakened, even expensive air defense systems can become slower, more confused, and easier to bypass. The Nebo radar plays an important role in this kind of network. It is designed to provide long-range early warning and help detect aerial threats at distance. Its job is not only to find one target, but to give commanders a wider picture of what is moving through the sky. In a war where cruise missiles, drones, and decoys can arrive from different directions, that early picture is extremely valuable. If the first warning comes too late, the entire defensive chain has less time to respond. A few missing minutes can decide whether a missile battery prepares, relocates, fires, or gets hit while still trying to understand what is happening. The Sky-M radar adds another layer to this picture. It helps strengthen the surveillance network by tracking targets and passing information to other parts of the air defense system. In simple terms, modern air defense does not work like one soldier holding one weapon and looking for one target. It works like a team. One radar detects something unusual. A command post checks the data. Another sensor may confirm the track. Then a missile battery receives the target information and prepares to engage. If this chain works smoothly, the defender can react fast. If one part breaks, the whole system becomes less reliable. This is why destroying radar can sometimes matter more than destroying a single launcher. A launcher without good information is like a gunner in the dark. It may still have missiles, but it does not know exactly where to aim, when to fire, or whether the target is real. Radars do not only protect themselves, they protect every battery connected to them. When a radar is damaged or destroyed, the effect can spread across a much larger area than the blast zone itself. Commanders may become more cautious. Missile crews may switch systems on more often, which exposes them to detection. Other batteries may be forced to cover wider sectors, and that can create gaps elsewhere. For Ukraine, this is especially important because many of its best strike options now depend on finding openings in Russia's defensive network. A drone does not always need to defeat every missile system. Sometimes it only needs one blind spot, one late warning, or one confused command chain. By hitting the Nebo and Sky-M radars near Kerch, Ukraine was not just attacking hardware. It was attacking Russia's ability to build a clean air picture over Crimea and the surrounding region. That kind of pressure can shape future strikes long before the next drone or missile is launched. When we connect this with the earlier strike near Volnovakha, the pattern becomes clearer. Ukraine is targeting both sides of Russia's air defense structure. the weapons that fire, and the sensors that guide them. Near Volnovakha, the focus was on launchers protecting a key southern corridor. Near Kerch, the focus shifted to the eyes watching the sky over Crimea. Together, these operations suggest a deliberate effort to weaken the shield piece by piece. Not by smashing it all at once, but by making it less coordinated, less confident, and less able to respond under pressure. Once surveillance becomes less reliable, the next logical target is the network that keeps troops supplied. That brings us to another series of strikes that received far less attention but may prove equally important. Ukraine's next wave of attacks showed that the battle is no longer focused only on weapons, but also on the roads and railways that keep those weapons supplied. Alongside its strikes against Russian air defense systems and surveillance radars, Ukraine also targeted 3 important logistics bridges. According to Ukrainian officials, the targets included the road bridge over the Korsak River in Zaporizhzhia, as well as 2 railway bridges crossing the Adar and Luhanchik rivers in the Luhansk region. None of these bridges attracted as much attention as destroyed missile launchers or burning radar stations. However, from a military perspective, they may be just as important because an army that cannot move supplies quickly will eventually struggle to keep fighting, regardless of how many tanks or artillery pieces it still has. Modern wars are won not only by firepower but also by logistics. Every artillery shell fired near the front must first travel hundreds of miles through a chain of warehouses, railway hubs, fuel depots, loading stations, and transport routes before reaching the soldiers who need it. The same is true for fuel, replacement vehicles, spare parts, food, medical supplies, and fresh troops. Bridges are the links that connect this entire system. Remove one important crossing, and traffic does not simply stop. Instead, it begins searching for another route, creating delays that spread throughout the entire network. For Russia, rail transportation remains one of the foundations of military logistics. Railways can move heavy equipment far more efficiently than trucks, especially when carrying tanks, armored vehicles, artillery ammunition, fuel tankers, or engineering equipment over long distances. A single freight train can transport hundreds of tons of military cargo that would otherwise require dozens of trucks. That advantage becomes especially important during a prolonged conflict, where thousands of tons of supplies must reach the front every day. This is why railway bridges are not ordinary pieces of infrastructure. They are strategic assets that support the movement of an entire army. When a bridge is damaged, commanders immediately face difficult decisions. Trains may have to stop before reaching their destination, while trucks are forced onto longer and less efficient roads. Engineers must inspect the damage, organize repairs, and protect construction crews from additional attacks. Every detour consumes more fuel, increases travel time, and creates new traffic bottlenecks. Convoys that once followed predictable schedules may now arrive hours or even days later. Although these delays may appear small at first, they accumulate across hundreds of supply missions, gradually reducing the speed and flexibility of military operations. Longer routes also create another problem that has become increasingly dangerous during this war. Every additional mile gives Ukrainian reconnaissance drones more time to locate military convoys, while attack drones gain more opportunities to strike moving vehicles. A transport column forced onto secondary roads may pass through areas that were never designed for heavy military traffic. Narrow roads, temporary crossings, and slower movement all increase vulnerability. In other words, damaged bridges do not only slow logistics, they also expose those logistics to greater risk. This is why military planners often describe logistics as a system rather than a collection of separate vehicles. Destroying one truck may remove a single shipment. Damaging a bridge can affect hundreds of future shipments. The impact rarely appears overnight. Frontline units usually continue fighting because existing stockpiles provide temporary support. But as days become weeks, ammunition deliveries may become less predictable, fuel reserves may shrink, maintenance schedules may be disrupted, and reserve formations may arrive later than planned. None of these problems alone decides a campaign. Together, they slowly reduce an army's operational freedom and force commanders to spend more time solving transportation problems instead of planning offensive operations. When these bridge strikes are viewed alongside the earlier attacks near Volnovakha and Kerch, a consistent pattern begins to emerge. Ukraine is no longer focusing on isolated battlefield victories. Instead, it appears to be placing pressure on several connected parts of the same military system at the same time. Missile launchers protect supply routes. Radar stations provide early warning for those launchers. Bridges carry the ammunition and fuel needed to sustain combat units. Weakening all three creates a larger effect than attacking only one category of target. Rather than trying to destroy every Russian position, Ukraine appears to be making the entire network less efficient, less responsive, and more difficult to manage over time. This approach reflects an important lesson from modern warfare. Victory is not always achieved by breaking the enemy's front line first. Sometimes it begins by making every decision behind that front line harder. Each delayed convoy, each longer detour, and each damaged transport link adds another layer of pressure to an already complex battlefield. At the same time these supply routes were coming under pressure, Ukrainian drone units were already searching for another category of targets: mobile air defense systems operating inside Russian territory. Ukraine's latest operations suggest that finding Russian air defense systems has become just as important as destroying them. One of the clearest examples came from the Lasers Group, a unit within Ukraine's National Guard, which confirmed a successful strike against a 9A-82 launcher belonging to the S-300VA air defense system in Russia's Belgorod region. According to the unit, the attack was carried out only after reconnaissance teams had accurately identified the launcher's deployment site. That detail is important because modern surface-to-air missile systems are designed to survive by staying mobile. They do not remain in one place for long, and every movement is intended to make them harder to detect before they can be targeted. Locating these systems is often the most difficult part of the mission. A launcher can hide inside forests, industrial areas, abandoned buildings, or temporary military positions. It may operate for only a short period before moving again, while camouflage nets, decoys, and electronic countermeasures are used to confuse enemy surveillance. Unlike a fixed bridge or an ammunition depot, a mobile missile battery can disappear within minutes after completing its task. That means success depends less on firepower and more on finding the right target at exactly the right moment. Without accurate intelligence, even the most advanced strike drone may arrive only to find an empty position. The reported strike in Belgorod also fits a broader pattern that has developed over recent months. Before this operation, Ukrainian forces had already claimed responsibility for damaging an S-400 Triumph launcher in the same region. The S-400 is one of Russia's most advanced long-range air defense systems, built to engage aircraft, cruise missiles, and other aerial threats over great distances. Even partial damage to one launcher can force commanders to reorganize nearby defensive positions, while engineers inspect the remaining equipment and decide how to restore coverage. The immediate effect may be local, but the planning burden extends much farther. Ukraine has also reported destroying a 1K-148 Yastreb AV counter-battery radar in the Luhansk region. Unlike missile launchers, this radar is designed to detect the flight path of incoming artillery shells and rockets. By calculating where those rounds were fired, it allows Russian forces to respond quickly with return fire. In many battles, counter-battery systems play a critical role because they help suppress enemy artillery before it can fire repeated missions. Removing that capability gives opposing gun crews more freedom to relocate, operate longer, and reduce the risk of immediate retaliation. Although these targets appear very different, they all serve one common purpose. They protect, coordinate, or strengthen other military forces. An S-300V launcher defends valuable areas against aerial attack. An S-400 extends protection over an even wider region. A counter-battery radar helps artillery units survive by identifying enemy firing positions. None of these systems is valuable only because of its own performance. Their real importance comes from the support they provide to everything around them. When one of these assets is lost, the effect spreads beyond a single vehicle because other units suddenly receive less protection, less information, or slower warning. This growing focus suggests that Ukraine is becoming more selective in choosing its targets. Instead of attacking every available military object with equal priority, Ukrainian planners appear increasingly interested in disabling the systems that allow the rest of Russia's forces to operate more effectively. Destroy one armored vehicle, and one crew is removed from the battlefield. Destroy the equipment that protects an entire sector, and many other units may become more vulnerable during future operations. It is a different way of thinking about military pressure, one that aims to reduce the strength of the whole network, rather than simply increase the number of destroyed vehicles. Reaching these high-value targets also shows how different forms of intelligence are becoming more closely connected. A successful strike rarely begins with the drone that releases the final munition. It usually starts much earlier with surveillance flights, satellite imagery, electronic intelligence, intercepted signals, and careful observation of movement patterns. Analysts compare information from several sources, identify possible deployment areas, monitor changes over time, and wait until they are confident that the target has been confirmed. Only then is a precision strike planned. This process requires patience because acting too early risks wasting valuable weapons, while waiting too long may allow the target to relocate. Taken together, these operations point to a battlefield where information has become almost as valuable as firepower itself. Finding the right target now demands coordination across reconnaissance units, intelligence analysts, drone operators, and strike teams working toward the same objective. That level of integration allows Ukraine to place increasing pressure on the systems that protect Russian forces instead of concentrating only on frontline positions. When all of these operations are viewed together, they reveal something much larger than a series of successful strikes. Step by step, Ukraine appears to be targeting the systems that allow Russia's military to function as a connected force, rather than simply destroying individual pieces of equipment. The sequence tells the story. First came the destruction of two S-300 launchers near Volnovakha. Then, Ukrainian forces reportedly struck the Nebo and Sky-M radar systems near Kerch. Next came attacks on 3 logistics bridges that support the movement of troops and supplies. After that, Ukrainian units targeted an S-300V launcher in Belgorod, damaged an S-400 launcher, and eliminated the 1K-148 Yastreb AV counter-battery radar. Each strike focused on a different target, but together they point toward the same objective. This reflects an important reality of modern warfare. Armies no longer fight as separate groups of tanks, artillery batteries, or missile launchers. Instead, they depend on networks that connect every part of the battlefield. Sensors search for threats. Command centers collect and process information. Communication systems distribute orders. Engineering units keep transport routes open. Logistics move ammunition, fuel, and reinforcements. Air defense batteries protect key positions from attack. If one part slows down, the pressure quickly spreads to the rest of the system. The strength of the entire force depends on how well these different elements continue working together. Explain why Ukraine is not trying to destroy every Russian defensive position at once. Such an effort would require enormous resources and would likely produce only limited results. Instead, recent operations suggest a different approach. By weakening several critical points at the same time, Ukraine can create temporary opportunities without needing to break the entire defensive line. A damaged radar reduces early warning. A destroyed launcher leaves a gap in air defense. A broken bridge slows supplies. A lost counter-battery radar makes artillery less effective. None of these events alone changes the course of the war, but together they increase pressure across multiple directions and force Russian commanders to make difficult choices about where to send limited resources first. These operations should not be seen as separate battlefield victories, but as parts of a wider campaign designed to weaken Russia's ability to defend, detect, and supply its forces. From the strikes on S-300 launchers near Volnovakha to the attacks on radars, bridges, and mobile air defense systems, Ukraine appears to be placing growing pressure on the networks that keep Russian operations running. As this campaign continues, Russia may face increasing challenges in protecting key military assets while maintaining the flow of troops and equipment. The contest is now becoming a race to disrupt the enemy's system before it can respond. If you enjoyed this analysis, subscribe to Military Force for more in-depth coverage of today's military and geopolitical developments.